something is being done right. For where we were, even the World Bank did not anticipate that we would have that kind of a quick recovery. So we are on a smooth place going somewhere.
So you have Uber, you have Bolt, you have Yango, you have Shaxi, you know.
Okay, so very good evening to you. You're welcome to the Shaft podcast, and my name is Raphael Frank. I'm your host for today on Ghana This Week Show. For this week's show, it's 8 days to elections, and as part of our corporate social responsibility to society, I just had to say that we are trying to dive into the conversations around politics and also find out a couple of things that we should pay attention to ahead of the 2024 elections. Today with me is my co-host, that's in person of Frank Banaman, an average Ghanaian. Banaman, how's the week been?
It's been a very good week, Ralph.
And you look forward to the conversation happening, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, sure. So today we have a panelist, astute panelist, as we always call our panelist. And to my immediate left, we have a former NPP member of parliament aspirant for the Afija Kwabri South. That's in person of, I call him Senior George Sarpong. I would always refer to him as Senior. I'm Senior George. It's a very good evening to you.
Good evening, but George is fine. George is fine.
George, how's your week been?
It's been okay, tiring. I had to do a return journey to Kumasi yesterday because we had a market invasion at KGT and a couple of other places. So, but all in all, it's been good.
Okay, sure. We'll talk about campaign later on. But now also to my left, we have with me andSaki Sosi, who is a lawyer and a member of the NDC. That's what he says we should call him as. andSaki, please, how are you doing?
I'm good.
It's nice having you in the studios here today.
It's also great to be here. I've been following the podcast, and the conversations are quite elevated, so I'm expecting nothing.
We are on the line of technical and also trying to make sure everybody understands what's happening. But today's conversation is going to span across what the manifesto has. We obviously have two members of the party here today, and today they are going to let us understand a couple of things we know, a lot of questions that we've been asking around. But for us to, let's do the icebreaker. Let's do the icebreaker for both parties. So, GS, let's have a conversation on the economy. I want you, at first the idea was, let's have a manifesto. But I feel like on your part of the house, top two priority conversation when it comes to the economy that the NPP has for the people of Ghana. Like in simple breakdown, like what everybody would want to understand. What are your top two priorities when it comes to dealing with economic crisis based on the manifesto?
Okay, so I think that when it comes to the priorities, it's not just top two. It's sector-based. And you realize that for every country to move, whichever thing that you looked at must have some correlation with the general economy, whether it is health, whether it is education, whether it's jobs, whichever way you look at it. So, for example, if you take the energy sector, one of the things that we are looking at is how we can get cheap energy sources for the consumers. Currently, if you look at the energy mix that we have now, we have the hydro being produced by Akosombo and the Pond dams. We have thermal from the Tema, Angomaso, Atuabo, all the other places. So even for the thermal, currently, what government is helping the state agencies like VRA and the other things do is that they are moving away from single cycle plants to combined cycle plants. What that basically means is that for the combined cycle plant, you introduce a new technological feature where, say, if the plant is producing about 100 megawatts for you, when you turn it to a combined cycle, you are getting 200 megawatts. So you are getting more. Now, we are gradually moving away from the energy sources that we know that affects the environment in a negative way. So, for example, when you do thermal, you'll be unleashing some warm gases into the atmosphere and all of that has an impact on global warming and what have you. Now, where we are moving towards is to do a lot more solar. Yeah. So currently, we've moved from when we assumed the reigns of power in 2017, Ghana's solar components was just about 13 megawatts. Now we have done more than 150 megawatts in the solar zone. Tabomia has proposed in the manifesto that he wants to introduce 2,000 megawatts of solar energy. Now, if you look at our current installed capacity, it's a little over 5,000 megawatts. Now, if you are introducing 2,000 megawatts, that expands our installed capacity. But then again, that's about 40% of what we currently have. Now, if you are having close to 40% of what we currently have, being at a very reduced margin, what that tells you is that cumulatively, the cost of electricity is going to come down. Now, what does that mean for the Ghanaian economy? means that the private sector can have cheaper energy source for its production, means that the public sector and what everybody required, and then there will be more stability. Then again, you look at what one of the things that this government is doing when it comes to the energy sector is to position critical energy assets in vital areas to ensure that power stability is guaranteed. So, for example, taking the thermal plant to Angomaso, for instance, is serving the whole part of northern Ghana to ensure that there's some form of stability. You do so because, one, you are preaching an industrialization drive. The critical component of industrialization is the stability of the power. So that's a base on the energy side. Now, if you would want to look at other areas, for example, let's say even education, health.
I think we would have conversations on that. I think where I get what you mean and how
are you looking at the economy as buying and selling?
No. So I think we'll break down to that. Like, I think the thermal part and the light part is something we would always get down to. I think our question generally has to do with the general context of the economy and how it has been dealt with. Okay, the reason I'm very particular about that is because back in 2016, when the current running person, like the person running for the party of the NPP was vice president, he was tagged as the economic guru. The idea we had, he is. It's something we could. I don't know. It's still. It's debatable. But let's just say it is.
Now he's a digitalization.
No. We'll get back to this. Like I'm coming. The reason I'm saying so is it was another idea that his ability, based on the knowledge he's gathered and everything he's had, he should be able to deal with lots of economic crisis that has happened. My question now is, when you look at the general idea of the economy, let's look at inflation, let's look at the other things, exchange rate and all of that. First, my question, I think they are just in two folds. Do you think the economy is doing well? But two, what part of the manifesto directly deals with the economy, whether it is doing well or not, based on your answer? Okay. Then from that, it's a preemption for what you should expect to, because you are going to answer on that side.
So it's interesting when my NDC friends, especially my brother Saki, says that he's no longer an economic group, but now he's a digitalization man. So you see, that's a misconception. Where we are today, globally, we are moving into what we call the fourth industrial revolution, which is built on the digital space. The economy is not just existing in oblivion or anything. Anything economic is built on the digital system. And that's the more reason why you need to have that right. Today, as we sit here, there are more funds sitting on e-platforms, mobile money and what have you, than in our banks. Take that from me. According to the Bank of Ghana, over the last 3 years, there has been more funds, more Ghanaian funds sitting on mobile money. There are more transactions on mobile money than interbank transactions, according to data from the Bank of Ghana. So there is no dichotomy between the economy as one area and digitalization as another. It's intertwined. So, so even to take it from the last question that he asked me,
yes, do you think
where we are today, whether we are in a better place or not? Let me take you back to 2022. In 2020, we saw COVID, and we are starting to recover from COVID. Then in 2022, we had Russia's invasion of Ukraine. What that did to the global economy and the Ghanaian economy is what most people may not really understand if they are not paying attention to the data. Now, when you talk about basic things being consumed in Ghana, like flour, amongst other things, we import close to about 80% of our flour from Russia and Ukraine alone. When that happened, immediately, price of flour shot up by more than 300%. It had a ripple effect on other products. Now, if you look at the fuel that we buy in this country, we import from the international market. Russia supplies to about 40% on the international market. So I stand corrected on that figure, but close to about that figure. Now, most of Russia's produce come towards our end, Africa and what have you. With Russia having issues with the international space, US sanctions or whatever, there was a time that Russia halted its supply of products onto the international market. Immediately, the Brent crude prices shot up. If you look at Ghana's fuel price build-up, you will see the Brent crude price and taxes and whatever. So when the Brent crude, which is a major price, goes up, automatically it reflects in the consumer price because we are practicing a deregulated system. What that did to us is that the global supply chain challenges that we're seeing in 2022 were directly imported into the Ghanaian economy because we run an import-driven economy. And that is the more reason why in 2022, inflation rose to over 50%. You recall that we were at a point we were buying for more than 17 cities. Now, where are we today? Today, we are recovering we are on a quick economic recovery. And even our projected growth, we've done more than what was predicted for last year and this year. Even for this last quarter, our growth has increased. What that tells you is that something is being done right. For where we were, even the World Bank did not anticipate that we would have that kind of a quick recovery. So we are on a smooth place going somewhere.
So the idea is that we are in a very good position, and then we are embarking on an industrial revolution.
Definitely.
So digitalization fits perfectly. I have a couple of questions. My first question is
A couple,
yes. On the fourth industrial revolution,
Yeah.
the problem with me when it comes to, and I think a lot of Ghanaians, when it comes to the jump to the fourth industrial revolution, is that we have not been able to utilize the resources we have right now to become industrialized in the first place. And the thing about economics is that you make the most money, and because yes, there's a lot of money on e-platforms, but you make a lot of money with the resources that are most proximate to you. The problem is that we have not been able to industrialize to that extent. Don't you think that jumping to digitalization, being your main focus, cuts out our ability to industrialize and takes away our ability to be able to use the most proximate resources to us, i.e. gold, cocoa, agricultural products? That's the first one.
So I think we can take it. If you repeat all the questions, I may end up
So I
forgetting
think you
some
can
of
answer
them.
that and then I'll ask the
sure.
second one. Yeah.
So I like the fact that you bring in the resources that abound. In economics, there's something that we call factor endowment, something that you don't have to struggle to get and you can easily harness. You realize that, I don't know if you've been following, you realize that we started what we call the gold purchase program, in addition to what we call the gold for oil, when we had to stabilize the fuel prices that was rising, and then we're using gold to pay for fuel that we're importing and all of that. Now, in addition to that is the gold purchase program. Ghana, as one of the world's leading producers of gold, we got to a point where from independence to today, our gold, so about 2017, our gold that we had in stock was less than 8 million ounces. And that is something that you would ask yourself, are we really a gold producing country? Now, when we started the gold purchasing program from last year, because if you want to consolidate your local currency, if you want to make sure that your gross international reserves are in good position, one of the things you have to do is you have to have a backing for the currency. So we started an initiative to have a backing for the currency, which is the gold that we have. Today, we have more than how do we say 5 times? Is it quadrupled or something?
Yeah.
Quadruple is 4. Okay, so it's
Pentapled.
more than 5. Like our gold deposits that we have in our gross international reserve from last year when we started the gold purchasing program, it's more than 5 times as we sit here today. That is what you do with factor endowment. Now, there's something that we call import cover. When the NDC was leaving power, their highest import cover was $6.1 billion of import cover. Even at the time that we are complaining that our economy is not doing so well, today as we sit, our import cover is more than $6.6 billion. So now I'm coming back to your question of digitalization. You don't jump from nothing to digitalization. What you have to do is you build it from the basis. So you recall that when we had 5G during the period of the SWAL administration, the 5G was given to one telcos to manage, which was MTN. Now, one of the things that we're supposed to do is to ensure that more than 70% of Ghana is covered with 5G connectivity, so that when you are traveling to Kumasi, Accra, or anywhere, you won't have the network going off, and it would help businesses thrive. Today, as we sit here, it's only 12% of the country that is connected with 5G. It means that
I didn't even know we had 5G, to be honest.
No, 4G. It's only 12% of the country that's connected with 4G.
I was about to say something like, hey.
So, and then now 5G came.
Okay.
And then government is supposed to issue license for 5G. Unlike what was done in the NDC time, that even though it had good intent, because at the time we needed funds to keep the economy running, and we had seen a company that had operated and was doing well, so we felt that, but we did not get the gains we were supposed to get from that. What this government did was that we did not do an outright auction, but rather we called on all the stakeholders in the space, be it LT to go, what have you, all of them, yes, all of them, name them, to come together to form a consortium that would manage the 5G, so they all benefit from it, and some international players as well were brought in, including Microsoft and other players as well. That solves one aspect of digitalization, which is having your internet and what have you at reduced cost.
But senior,
That's what.
ignore.
So let me just land on that point. When you do that, when you have the internet side at a reduced cost solved, then you come back to how the youth you intend to train are going to benefit from it. So prior to this, if you look at how the free SHS space, TVET has seen a lot of changes. Now, if you go to the TVET schools, the number of labs that they run is ultra modern. If you go to all the secondary schools, every child now has a tablet. Now, if these people,
a secondary schools in
yes,
Ghana right
yes,
now,
today, as we speak,
I have a sister in secondary school. She doesn't have a tablet too.
it's been issued to all the schools.
They don't have.
If she doesn't have it, when did she go to school?
She's in second year now.
Okay, then I will take her details and follow up with that particular school. No.
So maybe to the government they have issued it, but in terms of students on the ground,
so Banaman, the point is that you and I are here. We've seen what the education ministry has done.
Yeah.
There's been a policy where every child is supposed to benefit from a tablet to help drive this whole digitalization thing.
Okay.
All the schools have been issued. When it comes to the operationalization of the policy, it is localized. So, for example, if you go on YouTube right now, you will see that Opokuari School, for instance, there was this thing that there was actually a video of the official distribution and people taking them through it. So when it comes to the operationalization, it is not on the national school. That's why I would not begrudge you or I will not argue with you if you say there's an isolated situation where it's not been affected yet. I cannot argue because I have not seen it. But the implementation is localized.
No, before that, I just to go on, I think this conversation it might sound a little bit too technical. I mean, I like to be there. He likes to do the intellectual thing. I like to water it down. Like, before we get to the education and all of that, we'll still get to you. The way we are starting with him is first come, first serve. Everything you're saying on the technical front, let us break it down. For the average Ghanaian, all these things you are discussing, the import-driven and the digitalization, let's break it down. Do you think the average Ghanaian feel it in terms of direct benefit for the economy?
Ralph, before senior answers that question,
George is fine. George is fine.
I think he has been able to explain how he thinks that Ghana. I think he has been able to explain how he thinks Ghana is fine. The economy is better, right? We have an NDC person, and they have been bemoaning the fact that they don't think that the economy is fine. So I think
you should give him the chance
to engage that.
Yeah.
But before then, like after he answers, I'd want a response on the conversation about the COVID analysis, about the Russia-Ukraine war and all that. We know that the government of Ghana got a lot of funding from international bodies to help us curb the impact of COVID. The question that I think you should answer after he talks is, how was that money used up, and how come despite all that money and our COVID taxes, we are still recovering from the impact of COVID?
For extra layer on that, right after it happened, I remember e-levy, and I think e-levy is going to be a whole conversation. E-levy, COVID taxes, tax on bet and all of that. That's going to be a whole conversation for you to have.
I have all the time in the world.
Okay, sure then. So see, same question we asked them, and on your side, the conversation has always been on whether, do you think the economy is doing well? Let's be very fair.
Quite frankly, the economy is not doing well. Okay. But I think you started by asking what are the main issues in this.
Exactly.
What's the main issue for
economy?
NDC. I think that you've probably heard our flag bearer say it several times. We've talked about the fact that the economy is the main issue in this election. And anytime we talk about the economy, you'd find, people on the NDC side there's this political term today, obfuscating the issues. Everybody wants to use the word obfuscating the issue. But then what they do is to bandy around a lot of words, and then before you know, you're confused about it. Because before this party came to power, we're made to understand that when the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you.
Exactly.
And the exchange is what we all understand. And so when you bandy around technical words and all that, the ordinary Ghanaian may not understand. We in this room may understand what you're meaning, but the person on the street only knows that, when he picks up $1, that's around, 16 cedis or about 17 cedis. And that's a big problem for people that are trying to do like international transactions, and even for people who are doing local transactions where they have to, buy these things, right? Yeah. So like people are really struggling because the economy is really not great for them. And so for us in this election, the critical issues in this election is generally the economy, the macroeconomic indicators and how they are failing. And then if you want to narrow it down, really it's an issue of jobs. People can't find work to do. And when you talk about jobs, the response of the NPP has been, oh, we've given financial clearance for the employment of certain people into the public sector. You'd go there and find out that, well, those things didn't even happen, or even if they did happen, you had party members in there. And so when you're consistently talking about jobs, you can't even find the people that have been employed in the first place. NAPCO, you see, that's the problem with NAPCO. NAPCO is not what you term that stable employment, because it was more like a stopgap measure. Like it was just supposed to solve a small problem, and then now you have a situation where a lot of them have not even been paid for months, and a lot of them don't even have a stable employment now. So NAPCO didn't really solve any problem. It was just a political gimmick, and we are where we are today. And so if you look at the situation today, if you want to look at the thing from a realistic standpoint, people are going through it. Like Dr. Baumia said back in the day, nurses are suffering, teachers are suffering. Everybody is suffering in this country, and that's why the country needs a reset. So for us in the NDC, we have a clear impression of what exactly this election is about and the things that have to be done. And that is why if you follow our communication and our messaging, you realize our conversations really hinge on jobs. How do we create jobs for our people? Because if you create jobs for the people, you naturally have, it would have very good impact on the economy. People will be able to properly participate in the economy, and then you'll be able to do the other things that, you want to do. But let me also address the issue about digitalization and how there's been an attempt to create an impression that the NDC is not interested in digitalization. Of course, we did a lot of interventions as far as digitalization is concerned, right? But the digitalization issue has just become that shield that Dr. Baumia is hiding behind, simply because people want to ask serious questions about, the economy. Because, of course, we understand that, the fourth industrial revolution is happening, and we need to go along that. I hold the view that when you see a general development across the world, you simply can't sit back and wait. So, for instance, if there's a fourth industrial revolution ongoing, there's artificial intelligence, there's machine learning, there's Internet of Things, you can't just sit back. And that's the responsibility of the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization. Heck, what are they supposed to be doing anyway? And they do that. Investments have been made into the field of, communications right from the John Mahama era. But you have a situation where someone decides that, well, I'm going to launch apps. Every day, I'm going to launch apps and call it digitalization. And then there's a consistent effort to say, well, digitalization has got an impact on the economy. But tell me, the apps that Dr. Baumia has been launching over, since January, what's been the impact on the economy?
Well, that conversation can be had. Now, this is where we put the burden on you. You discussed economy already. Now, let's discuss. Your solution to this problem is to say that there is going to be 24-hour economy existing. Let me be very street petty. Clarity, street petty. It means Wachi sellers will be selling at 2 a.m.
No.
Like, the thing is, I'm trying to... Give me the most ridiculous things you've heard about 24-hour economy. Ridiculous. I didn't say intellectual. Ridiculous. Because...
I think it's an unfair
No.
thing.
You're trying to...
I think it's an unfair thing.
The reason I'm asking that is because the problem with 24 hours economy is when it started as an idea. It's almost a year now. This conversation has been on.
Yeah.
It's been very difficult to clear it up as what it's supposed to be up until recent times. You see, when you hear other policies such as free SHS, it's so straight to point. When you hear digitalization, in as much as it sounds funny, with the whole fourth industrial revolution term thrown around and plenty apps that we are launching, we know this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
With the 24-hour economy, it's been very difficult for people to pin it, to see what it is. Now that you're here, obviously you're not a candidate, can you give us a typical, 24-hour economy 101, what it means and what it would look like?
So the 24-hour economy is a deliberate policy to engineer an economy that can be running for 24/7. That's the whole idea. Now, it's very critical for people to understand that it's a deliberate policy, but also it's a voluntary policy. So, and in my view, I think it's also an incentive policy. So by incentive policy, what the government will be doing will be to create the incentives for companies, businesses, in the industries to want to participate in that 24-hour economy program. So this is how it's going to run. You have companies that are already operating. If there's a company that wants to subscribe to a 24-hour economy policy, which is essentially a strategy, you can't compel people to buy into your strategy, but you can create an incentive for them to want to participate in your strategy. what the government is creating an incentive for those people to want to participate in that, i.e., by giving them, tax exemptions so that they can participate in
So
that industry.
a question on that,
Yeah.
because it directly ties to what exactly you are talking about. For a policy, for a widespread policy to have a high level of success, it needs maximum participation. If all these companies are going to choose to not be a part of this, how are you going to ensure that the incentives you are given, which is basically 2 years tax amnesty, which NPP is also promising anyways, right? What is the surety that these incentives would incentivize all these companies to join for it to have the level of success that you need to be able to say that 24-hour economy policy is going to be successful?
And for context, these companies we are talking about are they are monopolies. You see, if they had enough competitions, you could always say you're incentivizing. Most of the companies that you look at that are going to be involved in this are big companies that own lion shares already of the markets that they are for. So if you tell them you're going to take them at the tax exemptions, they're looking at you like, is that the best you can give to them?
But
That's
I was gonna speak to that, before you also make the point, because I don't necessarily agree that all the companies involved are so big companies that they are exactly monopolies. And because it's a capitalist system, competition is very, very important.
Yeah.
So for instance, if we are doing the same business and my company has subscribed onto the 24-hour economy, now I'm producing more because I have more people working for me. They've got 3 shifts. They are coming to work and producing 24/7. We have high productivity. We are producing more. And we also have incentives that is making us the cost of our doing business quite easier. You would realize that you would ordinarily have to jump onto the policy because you are in competition with me and you need those incentives also. You need that, that production power also. So that competition is very, very important. And that's the reason why the deliberateness of the policy makes it work. Because if you are a company and you want to dominate in your space or you want to produce more and compete better, you would ordinarily have to jump onto the policy because it's really a competition space when it comes to capitalism. So I don't think that all the companies that are being targeted in here are monopolies, too big to fail companies. I don't think so. There are companies that will jump on it and benefit by expanding.
Another question again, and the reason I'm asking these questions is I know and Bannerman is always on there. I'm going to ask. See, the big conversation that has come up for general people that want to pick the policy up is people always try to say, what would it look like for wages? The reason we are saying so is generally people complain about low wages already and low waging system and all of that happening. Now you're about to create a system where the companies run 2-4-7. So it means that for people who probably work the entire 8 to 5 or work that kind of shift system, people are afraid that once they vote for you and it happens, there have been conspiracies running around that it means now they'll reduce the kind of salaries that they earn. How does your world deal with that, and how do you address that kind of problem and rumors that are existing?
So to properly situate the 24-hour economic policy, even though it's a strategy, you would have to also put in place some legislations. The party is contemplating an employment act, which will be looking at matters relating to employment and all of that.
Okay.
The point I want to make is that employers will not be able to arbitrarily reduce salaries and treat employees
Why not?
anyhow.
But they do it.
But they do it now.
Why would it be worse under your? Because currently,
you see that point you are making. That point you are making. You are making an exist on both sides argument. That you are saying, okay, well, it already exists, right? So it could still exist.
The argument is that it exists. It could be worse under the 24-hour economy.
I really do not think so.
No, because the problem with regulation and legislation I'm talking about is even now that you agree that it exists and there's currently a regulation on how people should be paid.
Yeah.
Even now, companies are not doing that and they are still getting away with it. You think now that they can say, oh, Kwesi worked in A, we are splitting Kwesi. The reason I'm doing this is I'm doing ground level, and because this elections is not about the Kwesi, you alone, when you were working 8 to 6, you were earning 2,000. Now that you are 3, it's either you decide to work double to get your 2,000, or now you are giving both Senior George, Ralph, and Bannerman your 2,000 for you to share all 3. If not, you can go for another company.
So that's on the assumption that after the implementation of the 24-hour economy, the lot of the company wouldn't have improved. Because the point you are making is that, okay, the company is still making the same money, and so now that they have more people working in there, they need to cut down the money so that more people can work in there. That's not what it is. What the 24-hour economy is supposed to do is to help companies make more money. It's to help companies scale. It's to help them be more productive. It's to help them, make more, commercial outputs. So if you make the argument, I'm sure, like, if you make the argument that, well, before 24-hour economy, my company was making, say, I mean, for example, 10,000.
Yeah.
Now I have more people working for me, and so that 10,000 must be shared by 3 people. It defeats the essential purpose of the 24-hour economy when it's supposed to help you make more money. So that argument really, I think in principle, can't fly.
Yeah, I think the assumption is that the companies will get more money.
And they would care about
they'll be able to pay.
I think
but you see, but Ralph, you see, exactly. The argument about companies not caring, it will always exist. So let's be fair. It is not unique to the 24-hour economy. Like, employers will be more wicked simply because there's 24-hour economy, but there will be regulation to check those.
Fair enough.
I have a very big question about the 24-hour economy policy. My problem with it is that, you see, former President Mahama says that he's going to incentivize the consumption of made in Ghana goods with the 24-hour economy. Yeah. It is in his manifesto. He says that he's going to allow for more people to buy. They are going to buy the made in Ghana goods first, and I don't know how that would look like, and I don't know how that would work. Right, that's my first question. How would that look like? How would that work? And secondly, having a 24-hour economy and doing it with existing companies, I don't think it's effective, because it didn't talk about building more agro-processing plants or expanding farm sizes or expanding more manufacturing companies, right? If you are not building more of these things, you are not instituting more of these things, it means that, again, the scale to which this policy will be successful will not be as big as you are projecting. How do you reconcile that?
So like I said, the 24-hour economy is a deliberate policy, right? So it is, and I've heard people say, oh, it exists in some way or form already, but there's not a deliberate 24-hour strategy in status quo. So that's very, very important for us to realize. Now, the target and objective of the 24-hour economy is to ensure that we have an import substitution and export-driven economy. What that means is that we'd have to be very deliberate about the things we consume and the things that come into our economy.
Who has to be deliberate? Is it us, the average person on the street? Is it the government?
No, those things will have to be government engineered. I mean, if you want your people to be consuming, things that are made in Ghana, so you would have to.
So I want to know exactly how the behavioral influences would work.
So are you saying that there will be a ban, most likely?
I mean, from where I sit, I can't exactly say.
Actually, I don't think that. I don't think what former President Mahama was saying was that there will be a priority for the consumption.
But also, let me just add. Like again, I said, within industries and within in capitalist spaces, there's competition. Yeah. If local industries can produce more, and their pricing will be lower compared to the other products on the market, you ordinarily realize that consumers will gravitate towards those locally made products. So that's the kind of efficiency that the 24-hour economy is supposed to give. That local industries will be able to produce so that those products will be, I won't say cheap, but will be effective enough for people to want to purchase. So it's not there's not an element of compulsion in this policy. This is a government that is saying that for our economy to work, you need to have more efficiency and you need to have more productivity in the economy. And so we want to engineer a 24-hour economy strategy, by being deliberate about it. And so the companies that want to do so, and there was a discussion about, are we going to build more agro-processing plants? The thing is, you have a balance of servicing, the public sector and also the private sector. So as far as the public sector is concerned, for instance, the government has identified various public sector institutions that address a lot of customer traffic, like maybe DVLA, the passport services, and how those industries can be servicing as 24/7, right? But also for the private sector, you can't go in there and say you are doing things for them. And that is why you need to give them the incentive to be able... Exactly. So you need to give them the incentive to want to be able to join onto the 24-hour economy.
I think I totally understand. I think that gives us a nice segue.
Nice way. It's just that I feel in as much as I agree, or I still, for somebody who has worked a lot with a lot of local Ghanaian companies, the reason why they find it difficult to scale down their prices to competition has always been about production. It's easier for China to produce 1,000 copies of clothes and just bring it
I
down. No, what I'm saying right now is it's sort of just to give the.
But those challenges will continue.
Yeah, it do exist. So it will exist on both sides, but. I feel like this is the best. I don't know about you, but this is the best.
Quickly
I
say
think he
something.
has answered.
No, I feel like you have given the best response I could see with regards to the 24-hour economy so far about it not being how people see it to be. It's more about a strategy-based policy rather than how people are thinking.
Oh, I think with the explanation he gave, I totally understand. I think the idea is that it's 3 shifts, right? So 3 different people for the same job.
Yeah.
The idea is that you get more people to be able to work. For the public sector, it's easier to do DVLA. You have more people, passport office. Private sector, you are incentivizing.
Exactly.
Beautiful. I understand. I think that segues us into the NPP's flagship policy, which is digitalization. Just as I asked.
Wait. Why is just he's been laughing for a while now. Before you go to that part, why are you laughing though?
I think he has pushbacks too.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily pushbacks, but before we started, I told you that Mr. Saki Sosi is someone I've admired over the period. I mean, and then he's a lawyer, and I'm an ordinary part one student. So I mean, I've admired him over the period, and I think that he's given an explanation to the 24-hour economy better than his flag bearer. Better than
I think.
But we're in this country when Ofosu Kwakye, who speaks for the former president, was in the studios of Asempa FM, and he says that, Obi, you don't know man beton watch.
No. I think no. What you're doing right now is they have a way of communicating, and they know the market they're communicating to.
So relax. Have you read the NDC Youth Manifesto? There's a point where they bring a certain formula where they say 133, the same job,
for
3 shifts,
yes.
and 3 people.
I think that breaks it down.
Yeah. So simple. You can ask my good friend that when he goes to, let's say, a state institution like Ministry of Information, there's a communication analyst who works on data for the ministry based on research and all, and advises the minister and cabinet. That's job. The 3 people, and they will run. Are they going to run?
I think that's why they mention specific kinds of jobs.
Let me. I also want to tackle the Wachi thing because it's no. I need to tackle the Wachi.
Yeah, because I think it's something everybody else.
There are various sectors of the economy that will naturally see an improvement with the implementation of the 24-hour economy. Like for instance, we've had discussions about how you would have to beef up, say, security. You would have to employ more people in the public security sector. But also, there would be an improvement in the private security sector because companies that want to jump onto the 24-hour economic policy will probably now have to employ more private security to provide them with protection. It's the same way. If you have people working for, say, 24/7, you would see general improvements in people that are working, say, if I'm selling Wachi, and why would I go and sell Wachi in the evening if there's nobody to buy? But if you are running a 24/7 policy where people are working around the time and they want to eat Wachi, it makes sense to go sell Wachi around the time. So I think that those Wachi examples have been used to make like ridiculous attempts at the policy, and it's really not fair.
No. There's a funny thing about it. You're having a discussion with us. Because in as much as we've had a good laugh with you, let's get here now. I think the just so we have the Ghana Music app. We have the Ghana Ride app. We have the what app? Citizen
Go
app.
Ride.
We have
Citizens
the
app.
what app again?
What else? I don't even know.
We have all these apps, and these apps have been the front of digitalization. Let's be fair, because the idea is this app is supposed to compete. And I'm not quoting. I'm sort of when he was giving the speech and was launching, he said, "Oh, do you know the net worth of Apple,
Uber.
Facebook, Uber? It's big. So automatically, when we create these apps are supposed to translate to us competing with them. Let's never talk about the workability of the apps because that can be a whole different conversation about whether they've been able to work or not. Don't you think that's literally been what the digitalization has been about when we look at the MPP and the manifesto that he has? Creation of app.
Okay, so before I come to your question, my brother mentioned. I'm not talking about the 24-hour. No, as for that, I mean, the Ghanaians have the answers. You know that is
obviously
pretty much. I mean, so I won't even go there.
Hey, okay.
As for the watching there, we buy it at night. If you go to Dankwaran about 12 a.m., you get something by. So that one, I mean, it was just by the side. My brother mentioned one of the things that are critical in the economy, which is jobs. Okay, he mentioned, and I was happy that he's introduced that into the conversation.
Exactly.
Now you can compare the MPP and the NDC when it comes to job creation, because both of them have gone to the IMF, and then they have all had conditionalities, and we have seen what they have done. And the NDC, when they went to the IMF, what happened? We saw what happened. For straight 4 years, there were no public sector employment.
But NPP also froze public sector employment.
There's not been a freeze on public sector employment.
There was. Right after, I think right after COVID or before COVID, there was.
No, I'm coming to you.
But
I'm coming to you. It's not a freeze. I'm coming to you. When we are talking about temporary measures to stabilize an economy, it won't go beyond a period of 3 or 4 or 5 months. So you cannot call that a freeze.
No, but it's not a freeze.
No. That is a temporary measure. That is not a freeze. How do you understand a freeze?
No, it was still
no. So if in a whole year, in a calendar year, if you're employing, you will not employ throughout the calendar year.
Yeah.
You would have, let's say, first quarter employment, second quarter employment, whatsoever. If in between 2 quarters you are not employing, ordinarily, you probably may not have employed, even if you are following that routine. So that doesn't even qualify for a freeze.
They said the COVID levy was a temporary measure.
So I'm coming there. I'm coming there.
Okay, sure.
Now, when you look at these two governments, and then the NDC, there was a freeze on public sector employment. Nurses were not employed, teachers and all of that. Even the teachers that were employed during that period, they worked for 3 years, they were paid only 3 months. Now, you come to the NDC, from 2017 to 2023, the backlog of teachers and nurses who were, even those in the medical field alone, over 175,000. From 2012 to 2015, 2016, they have all been employed now. Now, what that tells you is that if those people had been employed under the Mahama administration, we would have had the space to employ an extra 175,000 people. If you are being truthful to the facts.
I just want to keep quiet because George was quiet when I was speaking.
If you are being truthful to the facts.
That logic there, they will say if Kufuor had also employed,
everybody can take them.
No, relax. If you don't, relax.
There's always been lapses in employment.
Forget about it. We are never going to get to the time where everybody in the world is employed.
So agreed.
Moving from there, if you don't employ for 4 straight years as a government, what that does is that year in, year out, you are churning people who are active and able to work, and there are no opportunities for them. Now, when we did all of that, we've moved to a certain level. So today, we still have employment issues. But that is because, one, we have had to grapple with what we inherited plus what we are doing now. So you move in and you go there. Your next question was on which one exactly?
I think
our conversation is
on the app. I want to add up to that. So on the apps, my own is how, because he has been able to explain how the 24-hour economy is going to get more jobs, especially since jobs are a very important part of this election. How exactly is digitalization, the apps, going to translate into actual people having actual jobs? And how does that impact the economy?
Simple. So, I don't know if I've forgotten the name of this musician. One of these old-time musicians. You know Gamro, right?
Yeah.
Gamro, DP, royalties and what have you. And this guy, he used to be very active, high life musician and everything. He went to Gamro to get royalties and he was paid 12 cedis. 12 Ghana cedis.
Okay.
All he used it for. You understand? And then when it comes to these streaming apps, the streaming apps are big, like YouTube and all other streaming apps. They are big because of patronage. Now, what the first thing you would have to do is the setup, having the infrastructure in place, having all the modality in place. If it needs legal legislation whatsoever, you have it in place. Then you drive patronage. Once that patronage is being driven, so for example, if you look at Billboard charts and all of that, all the musicians in the US, when they top Billboard, they are happy because once he's topping Billboard, it means that it's going to be replicated across the apps, and the apps are going to pay him. And that's how it is. So setting the app is one thing. Setting it up, launching it, moving it forward. What the next government will do, it will be able to drive patronage so that the average Ghanaian would want to go to a Ghanaian streaming app so that a Ghanaian gets paid.
That's where the problem is.
How is that?
Get people moving from Spotify.
Before that, yes. I think the reason why that conversation of the music app isn't helping the argument is, I think this time we're looking at policies on a general scale. The reason why the reason why the music one seems problematic and why people might not relate is because
The musicians are few.
Yeah, but beyond
Okay,
even that,
no problem.
I think if you look
So
at how
you
much
cited
you
a
pay
couple of
them.
examples.
Yeah, so let us take a typical one. Like, what's the one?
The taxi app.
The Go Ride.
Go Ride.
app. Let's look at Go
Let's
Ride.
use Go Ride, simple.
Simple. When you take these Uber, Yango, what have you, how much do they charge the drivers as
They
their
have
fees?
percentages they charge them.
They charge 30%.
Okay.
How much is Go Ride charging? Go Ride is charging 10%.
Okay.
And even out of the 10%, it is using 1% out of the 10% to cater for the drivers' welfare when it comes to their SNIF and a form of insurance for them and what have you. So automatically, if a Ghanaian driver who is on, say, Uber or which of the other ride-hailing apps moves to Go Ride, that person is getting a 20% margin off. That alone is money in your pocket. Unless, of course, you want to tell me that is no money in your pocket.
Yes, argument we've had here on this podcast about the app is about its management and how government being the one to manage it. Don't you think
Government is not the one managing
Who is the
it?
people? So who are the people managing it?
It's a private management. What government did was to support its being set up, the legal the legal regulations and what have you, and also all the necessary incentives that it's a wholly owned Ghanaian company supported by government. So it's more of a PPA thing.
My problem with that isn't
It's not
even
managed
just
by
about
government.
the management. My problem with that is, one, you are within a market where you have so much competition.
Yes.
You have Uber, you have Bolt, you have Yango, you have Shaxi.
Yeah.
You know, the problem for me
Yeah.
is that what specific part about the policy is going to drive as much incentive to make people actively move towards the app?
So, yeah, definitely. If you take a look at the Ghanaian economy, more than half of Ghanaians are price-sensitive consumers. When we say someone is a price-sensitive consumer, it means that an increase or a decrease in the price can cause the person to alter its purchasing path.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at Go Ride app, for instance, let's say if somebody is on Go Ride app, if on my phone, I have Yango, I have Uber, I have all the other apps. If I want to move to any destination, I input my location, my final destination, I check the price. I go to the next app, I check the price. I go to the next app, I check the price. I always go for the minimum price because I'm a rational consumer and I'm a price-sensitive consumer. Now, what that happens is that all the other apps would have relatively higher prices if you want to do the basic comparison, because one, if you look at the price build-up, how much the firm is charging you as their earnings plus taxes and what have you is going to go into the final pricing that you are going to charge your client. Now, if somebody is on Go Ride app, all things being equal, that person is going to have a relatively lower pricing. For people who are price-sensitive consumers or rational consumers,
I think that's an
being equal.
assumption.
No,
Yes, let me cut you.
it's not an assumption.
I think
No,
Sosi-
it's not an assumption.
I think I understand. I
It's
understand
not an
what you're
assumption.
saying, but I think Sosi has to push back because you also push
Yeah,
back.
you push back, but
Oh,
you
no, it's fine, it's fine.
brief
It's fine.
pushback on that.
I think
And just not just a pushback on the taxi thing, but generally on digitalization. Like, what do you think the issues
Yeah,
are?
but I think you can use the Shaxi thing as an example. Like, just response to that.
The digitalization thing is a constant. It is. I think it's a low-hanging fruit, and that is why I think it is very problematic if anybody wants to create the impression that the NDC is against digitalization. We've been talking about digitalization a very long time ago. Only that we have not attempted making it look like it is somebody's baby or somebody's flagship policy, because there's not been a need to do so. The NDC has not been running away from the economy so bad they've had to run to digitalization. But
What you just did right now is deciding by you. Let's just go
you
ahead.
see, on the app issues, really, even on the rider hailing apps. So you've got Uber, you've got Yango. These are big apps, like popular apps. You've even got Shaxi, and I think that even for Shaxi, the value proposition in there is that if you're a Shatawale fan, you want to jump on Shaxi. You want to be. It's like a community that you feel like, oh well, I'm a part of it, and so I should help. Shatawale and his business, right? But really, what's the value proposition in this Go Ride
Patriotism.
and how is it going to get the kind of patronage that he's talking about?
Yeah.
So first, he talks about the fact that the costs are quite low on the driver side, right? So you have an app where drivers are rushing to, and I was really waiting to hear. So what is going to be the benefit for the consumer? The point is that his point is that it's going to charge less. I'm really wondering how
No,
all
yeah,
that
yeah.
mechanics is going to work in the economy, because okay, so I'm a driver and I'm on an app, and then people are paying me less. How do I buy my fuel in a country where fuel prices are going high? So like, how do I pay for my
Yeah.
overheads as a
Overhead,
driver
yeah.
if people are paying me less for work I'm doing, when other people stay on the
No,
Uber
before
apps and the Yango apps
yeah.
and are earning more
And
money?
for somebody who has engaged in that before, I saw when Uber came to Ghana first, we saw when Yango came to Ghana, when Bolt came. Every single person's pitch point was always, our price is relatively lower than the other. At some point in time, they themselves stopped because they realized that drivers are no longer using the apps prices anymore, but they use the apps as an avenue to just interact with the consumers.
Exactly.
So when you go to Kumasi, it's a general thing.
Yeah.
When you get to Kumasi, they don't use the Bolt price app because they find it ridiculous to
Yeah.
take price and boats from
They'll
tech.
ask you how much is
how
the
much,
boat
then they
fare,
end it
and
there.
then they'll negotiate
It's not
with you.
because they are not patriotic citizens. It's just because patriotic citizens don't buy fuel or repair cars. How do you how do the word marry that with your prices will be lower?
I think that you are looking at it the wrong way. So before the consumer sees the final price, there's what we call the price build-up. A big component of the price build-up is the margin that the mother company is charging.
Okay.
If the mother company is charging you 100 cedis, to start with, the price build-up is going to be something else plus 100 cedis. Now, with the Go Ride app, assuming all the other people are charging 100 cedis for their 30% or more margin, the Go Ride app is charging you 10%. Now, let's say if 30% is equal to 100 cedis, 10% of all things being equal should be, say, 30 cedis or 33 cedis. That is lower price for both the driver and the consumer.
Okay.
All right.
That is lower
So,
price for both the driver.
I think
So it does
I
not
think
mean that the driver will now have reduced money because
Yeah.
he cannot buy fuel and all of that. But the margin that the mother company is charging is rather reduced.
Okay, so I think I understand so basically the idea is that people are going to pay less. And people are going
Definitely.
to
The
get more
driver,
money.
and this is the first
My-
time that we are having a ride hailing app that actually takes the welfare of the driver into consideration,
okay.
where they are reserving 1% of the price to take care of the person as the person's needs,
Madam,
all of
Madam,
that.
for that. The reason I'm very critical about this and why my initial claim on it being backed by government is because if you say it is not backed, it's not
No,
government.
he said
no.
he asked whether it was
Set up-
being managed by
so
government.
wait, so it's not managed by government.
It's not managed by government.
So it means it's managed by a private company.
It's a government private sector agreement, but it's not managed by
So
government.
think
So
that's
why would they? That's my question. If it's a government private sector partnership, and the idea is not focused
Government
on
has an
profit.
interest. Government has an interest. Private sector has an interest.
So government
government's
will-
interest
so government
is,
will back up
government's
the private
interest
sector when
is
they fuck
to
up.
government's interest is to provide jobs. And whilst you are providing jobs, ensure that they are sustainable. Whilst they are being sustainable, you have to ensure that the persons you have provided the job for have the basic necessities of life.
Yeah.
Welfare issues are taken care of.
Yeah,
You
I
understand?
think in terms of management, this is actually the best form of management. Government and then private working together.
Yeah, of
My
course.
problem, we'll not even discuss that, but my problem is that whenever we are privatizing, a lion's share of the money goes to private individuals. The problem is when those private individuals may be related to certain people. So, for instance, no, I have to make this point. I have to make this point.
allow him.
Because we've had a situation where, and this is something that has been talked about largely in both elections, that Mahama gave the bauxite resources to his brother, right? There's a current conversation that with Dr. Baunye's digitalization, there's a fear that certain people close to him may
I've
be
been- I've been at the same
benefiting
people doing that.
from all those things. So I think
So-
the idea,
No.
that's the idea, accountability.
No,
That's
No. I don't think.
It's not a discussion, but a quick one. So you see,
Yeah.
personally, I do not have any problem with Ibrahim Mahama, a Ghanaian,
Okay.
who has employed Ghanaians,
Okay.
benefiting from a state resource. What I have a problem with
Especially when
is
you
the
went through the
process.
right process.
It's the
Exactly.
process.
Okay.
So you see, there's this requirement in our constitutional requirements of the fact that national resources are vested in the president and all of that for and on behalf of the people. And then the one who ensures all the operationalization is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, with the permission of the president. But even with that, he has to go to Parliament for parliamentary approval.
Yeah.
So what was missing in that equation was the parliamentary approval, which makes the whole thing erroneous. But when it comes to but of course, if there's a resource here and there's a company that can harness that resource for the benefits of the good people of Ghana, why shouldn't he be a Ghanaian but a foreigner?
I think we should end the
Let's end
conversation.
that
why
conversation.
should
I think we should end the
So,
conversation.
so for me, I don't have a problem with that.
Beautiful.
Whether he's the
Banana.
president's brother,
No,
so far as
Banana.
the processes are.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes this argument of family and friends and what have you, we get it wrongly. I would have a problem if there is an office being occupied or there is a contract and somebody does not. So, for example, if you come to Ghana here, there are certain organizations that have the expertise in certain areas that no other companies may have. When you want to do anything, insurance policy, when you want to do just even financial advisory, if you take a company like Benchenchele China and Kuma, he's a lawyer, so he knows. They have expertise when it comes to financial advisory. They may have certain persons in there who may be linked to, let's say, party A or party B because of their affiliation with certain people. Does that mean that even when they are the only company that have the expertise for some a certain kind of thing, because they are related in a certain way to some persons, necessarily we must push them aside?
So I think it's truistic, because it's truistic because really, if they are the only ones that can provide that service, we don't have a problem with it.
No, there is instances where we still have issues with that.
Serious instances where there were quite a variety of options, but clearly you could see that somebody benefited from the contract.
No, of course. I mean, those excesses. As for the excesses, they are there. But my general principle is that if somebody qualifies to do something, and then the processes, the due processes are gone through, like are done with. I don't think that we need to make it a big deal. So, for example, sometimes we may have problems because certain persons may be politically exposed. Look at this Senate issue that came up. Okay. Senate wanted to sell those properties as far back as 2012. You understand? If those properties had been sold to foreign companies, I don't think anybody would have come in this country. That is the kind of culture that I think we should move from. If the foreign companies come in, they are individuals who have set up the companies. Obviously, they are going to make millions.
But also because when politically exposed people are getting involved, like in the Senate issue, you have these state assets being sold at ridiculously low prices.
Low prices.
You know,
I think
and the processing that goes to sometimes they recently were told that Senate was declaring some very high dividends. But yet we're being told that the hotels were struggling. So when you have people who are like benefiting from these things, especially when they've got some influence.
I think that's a perfect.
So it's like I brought that example because it's a perfect fit.
So before we cut into accountability and then other matters, just to close the door on the issue of the economy, I want to ask a question on taxes. And on taxes, I want to ask about how currently the NPP and the NDC as well wants to abolish the e-levy, they want to abolish the betting tax, the COVID levy, right? This is the context of the question. These taxes were opposed by Ghanaians and yet they were passed. People would say, but Bawumia is the vice president when these things were passed. So how come he was part of the process of passing it and then all of a sudden he wants to scrap it? That's the first question.
Yeah, but even a clear context. The people that passed it are the same people campaigning for him. So it's not like they're aliens.
Exactly.
The only difference is just the president.
So the second question then is that, with that, even if Bawumia was against the e-levy, the problem is that the entire NPP machinery is who we are voting for if you are voting for the NPP. So you could say that Bawumia himself doesn't like it. But how come within a space of 3 years, all of a sudden, the tax that we said was going to increase our tax nets, is going to do this, going to do that, would save Ghana, all of a sudden has shifted? How do we trust the NPP? That is the question.
Okay, so I get you clearly, but I think it's not a matter of trust. Okay, it's a matter of the governance process that we have subscribed to as a country, and then what kind of revenue measures that a government may want to employ. Now, on the whole idea of Bawumia and the fact that he's not been favoring the whole idea of e-levy, I mean, that is public knowledge. We've mentioned that over and over again. He's delivered lectures on it while he felt that digital transactions should not be taxed, and that has been his position from then and has not changed. What is also the case is that his personal views is not bigger than a decision that is taken at cabinet. At the point that that decision had to be taken, you see, when you go to parliament with your budget, this is how it works. When you go to your parliament to budget, you say that, okay, I want to do A, B, and C for the people of Ghana. There are statutory requirements that you would have to do, like District Assembly Common Fund. Those things are statutory. Then there is capital expenditure. Then there are any other things that you would want to do. When you have defined all these things in your economic policy and program, the next thing is to ask Parliament for endorsement of your revenue measures. Your revenue measures are the means by which you are going to raise funds to cater for these expenses or the expenditure of the state and keep the state running. Now, if you look at Ghana from 1992, even under the same government, the revenue measures for a particular year may vary in another year. So you realize that when e-levy started, the percentage that was being charged in the following year, it was varied. That tells you that even under the same government, the same revenue measures may not be continuing for a very long time, or they are not perpetual. Now, what Bawumia is saying is that when he is made president, he has different revenue measures that he is going to use to secure funds to take care of his economic programs and policies, and those will not include the current revenue measures. So the question people have been asking is that if you are going to cancel it or remove it, then why not remove it now?
Okay, that one.
But the point is that if anybody makes that argument, it means that the person is not conversant with how government is run and how Parliament helps the state to run. If you are conversant with how it is, you would know that the finance minister will go to Parliament with a set of revenue measures. Everything that is included in that revenue measure, if Parliament approves, then you do appropriation. After appropriation is done, that's when you know that funds A, B, C is going to this state agency, is going here, and all of that. You understand?
Yeah.
That's how it works. So if I don't include a particular thing in my revenue measure, I have to find another means to make up for the revenue shortfall. So, for example, if you take the betting tax, e-levy, all of that, it makes that about 0.3% of GDP currently. Now, with the introduction of the flat rate system that Dr. Mahmoud Biaumia is suggesting, and then the variation of the taxes in the mining sector and other key areas, the expectation is a maximum 3.5% of GDP increment.
But before you go on that, we also make projections about the e-levy getting to where I think the projection for the first year was about either 5 or 3 billion Ghana cedis, and we didn't hit that.
Yeah.
We are replacing the e-levy with other taxes with the same kind of projection.
So
how do we trust that? Especially when the e-levy itself failed to meet the target.
I think that
before you go on, e-levy was backlashed.
Exactly. Before he comes in, you see, the thing is that if you are in a political dispensation where the dominant parties are in the center, we've got center left, and center right. In a dispensation like that, trust and credibility are very important. Because for such parties, their policies are always intermingling at some point. Like you can't really see clear ideological differences. Exactly, because at some point the parties want to do what they think is of the benefit of the people. And so trust and credibility is very important, because if there are policy differentiations, that's where in certain countries, if a figurehead in the party disagrees with the policy or philosophy of the party, they can spit the person out. But in a country like Ghana, it hardly happens because we're very much in the center. And so trust and credibility are important. If somebody says that I sat in the meeting and I disagreed with the policy, and yet because they are campaigning in an election, now they come out and tell us that, I disagree with the people, I think that in and of itself is a mark of a very bad leader. Because if you sat in the meeting where the thing was discussed and your argument wasn't taken and they outvoted you and now the thing is policy, do we even need to hear that you disagree with them in the first place? No, I just want to come to another point. The thing about the e-levy, especially, it's not a pragmatic matter, it's not a mechanical matter on how much money it's going to bring in order. In principle, the people of this country overwhelmingly rejected the policy. If you listen to all the outlets and all that, people said, we don't want this particular policy. Yet the government said, whether you like it or not, we will pass the policy. That's the first one. Second one was that people were saying that, look, on this electronic transaction, like say my 10 cedis, if I move it here, you charge me. If I move it there, on that same amount of money that's not, appreciated, you keep charging me if I keep moving it as an electronic transaction. We don't think it's a great idea. On these principles, people said, no, we don't think this policy is a great idea. This government said, whether you like it or not, we'll impose this levy on you. And then these people come again and say, we are going to abolish the e-levy.
but you
So I
see-
think on the issue of trust and credibility, they do not
But I
have that
think you need
credibility.
to respond to the specific things he says, because he says that Baumia himself, as the flag bearer, disagreed, and it's on record, and I've seen it say that he doesn't like taxes on electronic transactions. How do you engage with Baumia being openly against it? Isn't it just like him? He's part of the system, of course, but he's not the only person who decides. And you see, I think Nkrumah says that, like, you can't come out and say that I disagreed with my president or with my cabinet. I think it's a reasonable assessment to make.
I think no, since
how
they are
do
the
you
ones,
respond to
since
that?
they are the ones having this conversation, I sort of disagree with you in the sense that there's a thing about disagreement and the postures towards them. Of all the 100 and how many MPs do we have from both parties? 165, I think. Yeah, around that figure.
137.
137. Sorry, 137. If there was disagreement, the same way when the voting was, the same way when the voting was happening for Speaker of Parliament, or when certain political decisions were taken, you will know where the grey areas are. The fact that we could have people put in MPs from ambulances to come in, and MPs who went on vacation mysteriously came back to Parliament. The reason I'm saying so is, the reason I'm trying to put this together, MPs that went on vacation came back just to vote on that. You know what I'm talking about. So no more going. You can't come and tell me that. And that same MP is among those campaigning for you now.
To scrap
Exactly.
it.
To scrap it.
So
It's
I
very
think-
difficult
I
for
think
me.
for me-
So and no,
No,
and that's
Ralph,
what-
I
that's what I'm
think
making the
so.
point
It's
about-
Ralph, you are getting
wait,
it
wait.
wrongly.
No,
You are
wait, George. Before
Yeah, I think
I'm saying that George wants to stick to the what I'll call the pragmatics. How much money is it bringing?
Yeah.
in, and the argument that it has served its purpose.
Yeah.
I am saying that for the people of Ghana, it wasn't really about how much money it was going to be.
It's about
It was about the
punishment
principle
and the burden.
that they didn't
So,
feel like
I think I
this
get you.
electronic
So, the
transactions
assumption-
that makes their life easier should be taxed.
So
That was
the idea
issue.
is that we opposed it, you still passed it.
So why should we trust you?
Everybody else probably all of a sudden has a change of mind or a change of heart.
On the principle.
But Baumia has been against it.
Yeah, and one thing-
Baumia is against it because of the projections of the policy that he has right now.
Yeah, but
right. The problem, I think what he's addressing is that how then do we find your party or the current people running credible?
If same
get
people did it without listening to them.
I don't get to this whole idea of credibility here. You understand? For starters, let's understand what revenue measures are. Revenue measures are not perpetual. So that's the more reason why there was a time in this country where the NDC taxed cutlasses and condoms. Today, those things are not there. So that is to let you know that revenue measures are not permanent. For every economic year, you would go to Parliament and tell Parliament that for the things that I want to do, these are the ways I'm going to raise funds. All Baumia is saying is that for the things that he is going to do, he is going to have a different approach to raising funds. If anybody has anything, they should be telling Ghanaians how they are also going to raise funds. It's that simple. You get it?
So,
So it's not a matter of. It's not a matter of. It has nothing to do. Unless, of course, I don't understand credibility.
Do you know why credibility is important? Credibility is important because we're not just talking about. We don't run a one-party state. It's not just Baumia in the conversation. There's the NDC also, who are also saying we are going to abolish the e-levy. Now, the NDC has been consistent about the e-levy thing. The flag bearer of the NDC, John Mahama, has been consistent on his position about the e-levy, and the people surrounding him have been very vociferous about it.
I think that's my question.
On this issue can you trust? And I think that's why credibility and trust comes
let me
in.
ask my question.
So
Okay,
when the
let
e-levy was
finish.
when the e-levy was being passed, who passed the e-levy? The parliamentarians that passed e-levy were NDC MPs part.
Oh yes, I think they were. But I think
So
they were.
that is
But that's
the
very
But
slippery.
so-
It's a very
no.
slippery
So
place
that
to-
is the
to-
point
to
of
get to.
credibility that you should be talking about. You can't tell me that NDC MPs and NPP MPs who passed the e-levy, all of a sudden the NDC MPs who passed e-levy too are saints
But
because
they were-
no, relax.
I think
I'm
they were
even coming there. When you even want to look at the things that got e-levy to even store. So, for example, he's even talking about. Let me give you two critical examples of credibility. One, when this issue of voting for MMDCs came up, Haruna Idrusu, Muntaka Mubarak, and Honorable Ayaraga, the former education minister, check the parliamentary Hansard. They were the first people to make a case for it. When President Akufo-Addo made it something that he wanted to pursue as leader of the executives, all of them did a U-turn. That is what credibility issue is. When we spoke about free SHS and said we're going to implement free SHS,
they were asking that
the NDC said it was not possible. It was not possible. The NDC said it was not possible. So I'm telling you what credibility is.
No, I didn't want to be intervening, but I just wanted to add that what created the problem was that now they were asking that the local elections should be done on party lines. That's where people
When we mentioned that we're going to do free SHS, the NDC said it was not possible. Relax. Leo Kran, who was the then education minister in 2016, he actually said that it was only possible in 20 years. The NDC did 32 adverts against free SHS. No long ago, their flag bearer was on platform saying that he was the one who introduced free SHS. Yeah. That is what credibility is. That's what credibility is.
I think
but I mean,
I think at points like, so for instance, you point out why we shouldn't have, we should question the credibility because of a certain issue. I think you also point out why we should also question someone.
I
think you should be able to get a chance.
Before that, no. The reason I don't want to give that chance is because it's now becoming like asymmetric. No, the reason I'm saying so is if we decide to have a battle, and that's why this election is quite weird, because it's a battle of, you said this before, you didn't say this before, and looking at the kind of conversation we want to have, I think we want to move beyond.
No, but just a quick one. The revenue metrics and all that he talks about, it exists on both sides.
No. But the thing is,
but the credibility issue is a bit weighted.
But
it's more on our side.
It depends more on where you look at it from, because for us, we still think.
But I think that's the thing. That's the thing. I think the point here is that
on both sides,
so it's up to the citizens
for them to agree on.
Who has
Bannerman.
Yeah.
If you understand how governance systems work and how this country operationalizes its economic policy, you clearly know that this is not, when it comes to raising revenue measures, it is not a matter of, not a matter of credibility.
This issue
assuming
was
it's even
this issue was really topical.
No one is saying it's not topical. No one is saying it's not topical.
I can ask a final question on this before we wrap it up on this conversation, especially with what he's saying about this issue being topical. The reason why the credibility issue is coming up more now than ever is because you talk about revenue measures and all those things, right? The problem is that with all the convincing us to pass the e-levy, these conversations were had, the projections were made, right? Within 3 years,
the toll booths were taken away.
Took out toll booths and all that. Within 3 years, right? All of a sudden, is it that all your revenue targets? Is it that all your projections failed? Because if that's the reason why I'm asking this, is that then how do we trust the new measures and projections you are bringing with your new other taxes like the flat rates, the mining, and all those things? How do we reconcile
it?
So
you actually answer the question you're asking in your attempt to even ask the same question. This is very simple. My brother Sosi is president of Ghana.
Okay.
He needs $1 million to do projects for 2024. He comes to tell us that for 2024, he will sell Mr. Arthur's watch to be able to take us through. Then we come the following year, 2025. He says for 2025, he will sell his boxer shorts and shoes. Then we are asking him that, why don't we go back and sell the watch, because we know selling watches has helped us. That is the kind of thing we are doing. When it comes to revenue you will use to run your economic programs, it is not tied to a single stream.
Okay.
So today, if we are financing this country, one of the ways we can finance is debt financing, which is borrowing. One of the ways we can also use to finance is the generation of taxes from our local markets. And then if we have any foreign investments, what have you, donor support, amongst other things. All of those are revenue streams that we can have. Those things are not static. So if you pick even the NDC, the measures that the NDC used under Professor Mills were not the same measures that were used even under former President Mahama. So it is not static that any MPP government that comes has to necessarily say use e-levy or any other thing. It is not static.
If there wasn't a credibility or trust issue here, there would have been no need for Dr. Bawumia to tell us that he disagreed with the e-levy during the cabinet discussions.
Oh, I think for that you can.
The point is that even Dr. Bawumia himself has not come out to say that he disagreed with all these things in cabinet
Well,
and all of
well,
so
well,
no,
well,
so
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
like so
around him. Well, I'll give you that.
consistently, what he has maintained in
That's
public
true.
is that charging electronic transactions
Transactions,
is an
deters-
affront to digital inclusion.
yeah.
He has a paper on it.
Yeah.
He's given several reasons. It's on that basis that people have made informed decisions, and he has not run away from that his initial position. And for me personally, I pay e-levy, but I am not a fan of e-levy for my own person because of, I mean, no one is happy paying tax.
Yeah.
If I had the option, I'm not sure I would just, I remember there was this situation where Calvin Prince Watson, he came back from Black Stars, one of their, and he went to GFA that he wanted to pay his a tax on the amounts that he had been paying.
Yeah.
Someone saw him and was like, "Are you serious?" You know, that's the typical Ghanaian.
No,
So
but
when you give people that room,
Yeah.
they will
No,
not.
I think
The bigger, but just a quick one. The bigger issue here, beyond the trust and credibility, is how the MPP tries to make it look like whatever goes wrong in their government, they have Dr. Baumia involved in it. But then, he was not the one at the forefront of it. It's a big issue, and I think it's frustrating a lot of people when they've given you this kind of influence, and yet every time there's something they have an issue with, your response is, "Oh, I wasn't involved." If it's something that looks glamorous, then you are the forefront.
So
of it.
I think on that the thing is, what is happening now is we are giving the people viewing, and I think honestly, we've said it over and over in the show that the votes will decide whether they really had a problem or they understood it differently, or they are going to reward or punish the government for what they are doing. So I think at this point, that when you listen to GS's case, so at a point in time, if you've not paid the level, you're not here when you saw the backlash happening, you look at it and be like, wow, was this really what they are thinking? But you'd be like, it's very good case repair, but still, I still would disagree if you brought somebody from a hospital to come and pass that bill. That thing is still paying me up to now, but let's just push it to the side. Now, we have a few minutes before we go, but this is a very important conversation we've had on this platform. We are entering into a world where there are so many free things happening around on both sides of the house. So free SHS was there, but let's put free SHS aside. Now there's free university for first-year students. There's free university for people with disabilities.
It's not free university. It's AFUF. But have you not read the documents? No, I have read the documents. It's AFUF.
Okay.
If K university student is paying about say 6,500, the AFUF is less than 800 cedis. That
Which
is what
basically free though.
that is not free.
Okay. Almost free. I think that's what we have to No. Almost free.
How do you call 800? When we say free SHS, the average expenditure for an SHS person in a school is between 5,000 to 8,000 Ghana cedis.
Have you heard about the people that are saying they are paying about
Exactly. People are paying for uniforms, people are paying for other levies and basic things.
Please, if anybody paid for a uniform, it is a parent wanting to buy an extra uniform for a child.
Yes.
Nobody pays. I have a nephew. I have a nephew in Prempeh College called George
If anybody
Sarpong.
says they are offering you something free, you can always make an argument on whether it's free or not.
No, fine.
It's not. I mean,
Yeah. Let's
this one is. I mean, this is not even arguable.
Yes,
No, I'm
yes.
telling you, I have a nephew in Prempeh College called George Sarpong. The only thing I had to do was buy him provisions. Everything else is provided for by the government.
Let me finish my question.
Yeah,
Let me just
He's not buying books. He's not buying uniform. Where he's sleeping, where he urinates, all of that is free.
It's okay.
So I mean, so how do you compare that to
I don't believe so
800
because
cities of 6,500?
I don't
Tell me
believe
it's
so.
free. I mean,
back against my question framing, that thing will not change it off. Free and almost free institutions entry. Like
it's
all
not
of a
even
sudden.
almost. I mean, this is English.
Yes. What you're doing is you know me already. Me, I've said almost free. It's almost free. Technically free university for people with disability. There is this trend of government always wanting to help, and I understand it's the right of government.
It's the MPP that has said
relax.
for the disability people.
Let's give them no, but let's give them credit. No, the thing is, all of you are on a free, and the thing is, we appreciate governments trying to help people more. But the question now is, and it's a very brief question for both sides of the house. If you are in the position to do lots of free things, and as an economy, we are not in the position to do that because we still pay loans, like all of those. We can talk about the economic problems.
Because
everybody
next year
faces.
we are paying the IMF. I think we are going to start paying off our debts.
How do you people see this from your personal perspective and also from party perspective? How it helps the country?
Specifically, so I think I want to add up to that. We have a lot of policies that require a lot of
money.
Funding. Yes, we need a lot of money to finance these policies, right? So at this point, when you are doing a lot of free things, or well, not free, but subsidized to an extent, where are we going to get the money from? right? Considering the fact that we are already strapped for cash, we are borrowing, we are trying to pay off our debt. Where are we going to get the money for the 24-hour economy, the free senior high, first year university, the subsidized, what's it called, disabled fund, or yes,
That's
how?
having free tertiary education for disabled persons.
So where are we going to be getting the funding from? That's my question.
Yeah, what is to be brief too?
Am I going first?
Yeah,
okay,
go first.
fine.
Briefly,
So
you know with time.
first and foremost, for us in the MPP, one of the things that we consider a lot is affirmative action.
Okay.
Now, when you look at affirmative action, you are looking at how you can lift up people who are considered social minorities. So even if you look at presidential parliamentary primaries, we always charge a fee lower than the normal price for women and youth persons and then persons with disabilities. It's against this backdrop that we introduce the concept of free tertiary education for these disabled persons. Now, the argument of cost comes in, and then we ask ourselves, what are the numbers?
Okay.
If you pick up KNUST, for instance, and you take the persons who are persons with disability, you realize that if you compare their numbers to the general population, it's almost negligible.
Yeah,
You understand?
that's true.
Even beyond that, there's another leg to this whole idea that we started. When you look at Students' Loan Trust Fund, first, you would necessarily, if somebody was in need and the person needed funds to cater for fees, accommodation, whatsoever, the person had to go find a person who was a government employee paid by a controller to be a guarantor, so that that person would sign that in the event this person defaults, I would pay. Unless it's your parent, how many people can have someone do that? But under this regime, Dr. Baumia brought in a proposal called the No Guarantor System, and it has been endorsed. All a student needs is the Ghana card to be able to access student loans. So even for the students who do not have access to a lot of funds and all of that, now that problem is literally solved because they can just do, by just using their Ghana card, access whichever funds that they need from the Students' Loan Trust Fund. When it comes to the whole idea of anything free in education sector, me, I am pro it. I am part of the people that demonstrated against Jinano Pukwajima when she was education minister in 2015 and wanted to increase the burden of students when it comes to payment of utilities. At the time, your friend Kobiamwa, he was NUC's president for KNUST. We joined him to demonstrate. And so anything that lessens the cost, because in Ghana, the biggest problem that bars access to education is the cost element.
Okay.
So once anything that seeks to remove that, personally, I am pro it. You understand? So you see, you should ask yourself what we stand to benefit and not just about the cost. Oftentimes we are comparing ourselves to Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, and all of those things. Do you know where some of these countries started education at the basic level and at the second cycle level being free? As far back as 1991, 1985. We're still here and just projecting that we have cocoa. So you see, it's also a matter of priority. For me, I would rather have an educated population. The advantage of having an educated population is oftentimes not looked at in the very essence of it. When you have an educated population, the advantages are it's far outweighs not having an educated population. So for me, I think that it's a good thing that we have people going to school and all of that. If anybody has attained secondary school education, the person can make something. For example, somebody who goes to TVET, today, the kind of education they are having in the TVET, even if the person does not progress to the tertiary level, they can actually do something with their hands and they'll be okay. Recently, YEA was doing an artisans program. They graduated over 10,000 people. You realize that these were skills sets sort of thing, somebody who does electrical welding and what, all of those things have a role to play in the general economy. So for me, I think it's a good thing. Only that you have to look at the cost element and how you are taking care of it. As for debt, for instance, there's not going to come to a time where we will say the country is without debt. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Even the US that gives out money. US is one of the countries that's saddled with a lot of debt.
But
so that's
is it the problem? The question is, before Saki steps in, the problem is, and I also want you to address that. The problem is it's not out of context. It's when you are paying so much, yet you have social welfare policies that drains so much from you. how does that help the economy?
So you see, I think for me, if you ask me, I think that what we need to concentrate on as a country is sealing loopholes in certain sectors. If you take the Fourth Republic from 1992, coming down, I mean, from first president, second president, third president, all of that, one of the things that happens is that on an annual basis, from Professor from JJ's time, on an annual basis, we lose more than $1 billion to loopholes created in the economy by certain hawks. There are times that you check the data on international trading, say gold, for example, and you realize that how much gold that have officially left the shores of Ghana and how much gold have been received on the other end are a mismatch. When you create all these loopholes, if free SHS is costing us $2 billion a year, and then we've lost, let's say, $6 billion to corruption in a calendar year. Do we need additional funding to fund free SHS? So I think that we have to prioritize our things and then seal all the there are a lot of loopholes in the Ghanaian economy, especially when it comes to even taxes. How many people that are taxed and all. So we have to find a fine balance around it. But I think there's this misconception around Ghana's debt situation that sometimes you even find educated people projecting. You see, when it comes to debt, the debt you are paying today is not the debt that you have taken today. So every year, if you go to Parliament, there's what we call the annual debt report. When you pick the annual debt report of 2023, you realize that there are even debts that present for contractors that we are paying for now.
The idea is that
you understand.
So the idea is that we have a lot of debt to pay. Of course, it's not from here. The problem still boils down to you are borrowing more and we are still draining our coffers. But I think I understand your
of course. I mean, that's just a
holes that need to be patched. And if we patch it, it does help. And then the people, the disabled people, are not so much.
No.
So it's negligible.
I mean,
all right.
if
I think
you take
Sosi
any
can
community,
respond now.
Well, so you see, you ordinarily may not have the money available to do some of the necessary things. So in deciding where to pump the money, you would have to look at two things. You would have to look at the need to take the action, the necessity of the action first of all. And then secondly, once you do a cost-benefit analysis, how much is it going to cost you and what's the benefit you're going to get? Now, if you look at the NDC, for instance, like I've told you, the very important thing in this election is the economy and jobs. So some of the flagship things that we talk about, the 24-hour economy, the Women's Development Bank, the Ejumara program, the quite a number of the National Apprenticeship program, and then even the 1 million coders program and all that. All of those things are going to cost money. But you have to make projections as to how much money you are going to get back. When you do the 24-hour economy and you give the tax incentives, all of that, you'd have to quantify the amount of money it's going to cost. But then also you need to look at how much money you're going to get back into the economy, the people that are going to be employed and the benefit of that in the economy. So you would always have to do the cost-benefit analysis and use that to justify it. So like I told you, because the parties usually have very aligned ways of thinking, like we don't disagree on the issue of loans. Like loans can sometimes be helpful. But again, that is why I talked about the issue of trust and credibility and also competence. Because you see, even though we agree that loans are sometimes necessary for us to make the interventions we have to make, there are situations where we need to assess how much money a party has actually borrowed and a government has actually borrowed and what they actually used it for. If you are hovering around 760 billion Ghana cedis in a space of 8 years, we need to have a discussion about it. Have you been prudent? Have you been prudent in the use of the money and all that? So those are very, very critical things. But I think your question was also hinged on the university, the free level 100 thing.
Yeah.
Now, like we discussed, when you have people, and like we've told you, the NDC is not against free SHS. So if you have people that are done with free SHS, the very important question is, what next is for them? A lot of them have got financial barriers for which they may not be able to enter the universities. And that's why intervention like this is very, very important, because if you are building an economy that you want to see 24-hour economy, to have people who have got a very good education running these sectors of the economy, you've got to have people that have got that kind of education at tertiary level. And so that is very critical. But it's important because in the cost-benefit analysis, you would definitely reap that money back into the economy because that training would always yield back into the economy. So yes, we are all concerned about the kind of borrowing, but you can trust the NDC on the use of the borrowed monies and the intervention, the benefits that will eventually yield to the people of Ghana.
Honestly, I won't lie. I really appreciated this conversation for lots of reasons. Reason being that this is our fifth episode of the Ghana This Week, and so far so good. We've had lots of conversations based on trending topics, and one of the biggest topics that have come up are the conversations we've had with the two of you. Especially, even Badaman knows, we've tried to simple it down. Sometimes we say some simplistic things too about 24-hour economy, digitalization, and all of that. And I really appreciate how clear the two of you have been with us, because now I know the two of you have your positions already. It's now based on us and the viewers on how we are going to vote. But before we go, we are giving both each panelist 2 minutes. If you were to speak to, we are targeting the general Ghanaian populace as to why they should vote these elections. So the first question is why they should vote, and two, why they should vote for your party. Just 2 minutes. Senior GS. You say we should not call you senior, but it's just 2 minutes. I think we are over time already. 2 minutes. And no response to anything that has been said before. Reason being, we gave everybody the chance to, and the reason is we are giving everybody the opportunity to take what they've taken. Because when you view it from Esquire's perspective, you understand that, wow, okay, this is what they meant. When you listen to, because I'm still astonished with the whole E-Levy explanation. I look at it like, hey, they are GS, count out for us, why? So just 2 minutes. Give us, like, why they should vote, and two, if they will be voting, why they should vote for your party.
Well, of course, I mean, for anybody listening out there, well, with the exception of these two people, because they already have their minds made up.
Have you told you are voting for?
No, but I'm hoping that it's in my direction. Because I mean, I am presenting the best candidates in this election, so I'm hoping that your votes will favor Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. For anybody listening out there, for us as youth, you realize that if you take the population dynamics of this country, close to about 67% of us are aged between 18 and 37. That means that the destiny of this country is in our hands. We are the ones who determine how this country moves. And for me, I would admonish you all to vote number one for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and the MPP's parliamentary candidates in whichever constituency that you find yourself. If you are in my own, if you are Abre South, all the better, we could work together for the elephant. For a number of reasons. One, when we talk about emergency healthcare, even in this country, at the time that we came into power, there were just about 30 ambulances that were not even operational. We introduced over 300 of them, 307 ambulances. Today, if you are sick, there's something that can take you to the hospital. If you're in a location where an ambulance cannot have access to you, all you have to do is to dial your emergency numbers, and then through the drone for medical services, we send essential medicines to you. Today, over 5.7 million Ghanaian students have benefited from free SHS. When it comes to jobs, our government has produced over 2.6 million jobs. When it comes to infrastructure, go to the education sector. In the month of November alone, we have commissioned over 80 education projects. Go to roads. When we came into this government, the NDC had done about 4,000 kilometers of road. We have done in excess of 12,000 kilometers of road. And so every sector of the economy, we are touching it. Every sector of the economy, we are doing well. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia presents you a candidate who is competent, one, a candidate who abhors insult, a candidate who is down to earth, a candidate who is compassionate, a candidate who is a leader by every essence of the word. As vice president, he has championed more than 33 key projects of this country. Talk about the fact that December 1, we are going to have dialysis being free across all government hospitals. When we came into power,
2 minutes.
we have added over 30 dialysis machines, and we are the only government in recent years, at least in the last decade, who have actually made the effort to contribute to that. Let me even talk about sports.
2 minutes.
In 2017, the number of astroturfs in Ghana were just 3. 1 in Sugakope and 2 in other areas. Today, the MPP government has given Ghanaian youth more than 150 astroturfs, and we have 10 model standards stadiums across the 16 regions. So I wish I actually had more time, but for me, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is the best option for Ghanaian youth and all Ghanaians listening to us, and your MPP parliamentary candidate is definitely your best option. When you take the ballot paper, you don't have much time. Just look at number one. There is nothing better anywhere else. Just give it to number one. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to that, Panaman, he said he knows where we vote for. I think
No, I didn't say I know where you
Oh,
go.
no,
So
no, no,
I think
please.
I said
Oh,
I
but-
know your.
but-
I said your minds are made up.
That
That is different. That is different. That is different. No, so you are misquoting me. I said your minds are made up.
Nah, you
Ah,
okay?
my-
You that day we'll see how the elections will go on.
Is
But
your mind not
guys,
made up?
My mind is made up.
Yes, of course. So,
Sinya,
Yeah, so-
he said 2 minutes, but he spent 4 minutes. So you have 4 minutes to use.
I'm going to jump on from where he left off because he talked about the astroturfs. And you just need to pass through your community and look at the state of the astroturf that this government actually put together. It is a fair description of the state of this country, the state of our governance architecture, and the state of the economy. You see what they call astroturfs that they built in those communities. But very importantly, I'm told I have 4 minutes. But I mean, 4 minutes is very short because the 8 years we've been through, the hardships, the pain, the tears that people have been crying on their beds. I think people have already made up their minds. But again, if you were listening to George and you were cringing at the things he was saying by way of talking about progress they've made and all that, then you know that this government must be booted out. But the NDC is that option for you because the NDC is promising you a reset of this country. Look, for me, I think the very important thing is that if you live in a country where the government has been as a monumental failure as this one has been, you cannot go to the polls and reward them with an extra term. What you see is a far worse form of arrogance because the government will have the view that you couldn't even punish them when we're this bad. You couldn't even punish them when $1 was 17 cedis. You couldn't even punish them when our debt was ballooning. I think that people need to take, and that's the reason you need to vote in the first place. It is your power. You need to go to the polls on the 7th of December and speak clearly to this government that we're tired of the deceit, we're tired of the lies, we're tired of leadership that fails to take responsibility. That vote also, what that does for you is an endorsement of that 24-hour economy that the NDC is presenting to you. It's also an endorsement of the Women's Bank policy that the NDC is giving to you. It's also an endorsement of the Jumara policy that the NDC is giving to you and the very fantastic policy that the NDC has got. So 4 minutes won't be enough to describe what we've been through over the 8 years, but it's very, very important. Your vote is your precious right, and you need to speak clearly to this government that we're not going to tolerate this kind of monumental incompetence and failure again. And that's why we're voting the NDC come December.
Guys, I think it's this week's Ghana This Week episode has been the best.
You beat me to it. during the speeches of both panelists, I was like, this is some of the best speeches I've heard, and I've been in debates for a long time.
Yeah,
so
and we appreciate
really
that. Want to
appreciate
really
it.
say a thank you and thank you to Senior George. He said you should not call him Senior, but we're still calling him Senior George, and also to andSaki Sosi. And once again, subscribe to the Sharp Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Instagram. Follow us on Twitter for updates. One thing we should always note is that your vote is your power. What it means is that in 8 days' time, you should vote. Now, we should always agree that political differences are always there, but irrespective of the differences, we are still one individual. No matter what happens at the polls, people still have to live together and laugh together. If you are voting for the elephant, you are voting. If you are voting for the umbrella, you are voting.
Cheddar,
if you are voting
Alan.
for the butterfly, you are voting. And if you are doing independence, you are also voting. The idea is just that I feel like elections are not supposed to be as...
Cheddar will not be happy. Cheddar will not be happy.
They're as deep as personal as what you are trying to make it look like. And I just feel like we should always pay more attention to the good thing democracy allows us to do. As somebody would always argue back in debate, democracy allows us to make both good and bad decisions.
Democracy allows us to make stupid choices.
Oh, Charlie, but still, we still have to pay attention to them. Thank you very much for watching this entire episode with us. We really appreciate you, and watch out for the next episode. Your vote is your power, and we advise you to vote. Thanks a lot, and shout out. Bye.